power of the internet is bringing together individual investors to crush Wall Street hedge funds that are short GameStop, Bed Bath & Beyond, and AMC Entertainment. So is this the start of a new trend, a paradigm shift perhaps? Joining me today is Michele Romanow. She is the youngest dragon on Canada's Dragon Den. She is a Fortune.com 40 under 40, and she is the founder of Clearbanc. Michele, welcome to my new show here at Stansberry. Always happy to see you.
Great to be here too. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so we have a lot of ground to cover today. We're going to talk about e-commerce in a bit, but first I want to get your take on this paradigm shift that seems to be overtaking Wall Street here. The power of the internet bringing together a community of individual investors to really crush Wall Street hedge funds here.
Yeah, I mean,
what do you make of this takeover?
What a surprising story. I think it's actually a continuation of a lot of the trends we saw accelerated during COVID. And so this really started with the cancellation of sports and a lot of sports betting, which drove people, the economy has done remarkably well. So there has been all of this additional capital that people effectively are looking to kind of play with in many ways. There is less trips this year. There is less places to spend this money. And so we actually saw this incredible surge earlier this year, into Robinhood, all of these kind of, new investors, not professional investors that are really looking to kind of play the markets. And I think this has just become an extension. I cannot see this lasting long. I think the markets will be able to correct for this, but it is a very interesting thing. And I think, it's now the fintech platforms have gotten so good. These are just all available in everyone's pockets all the time. And the time has been filled in what used to be filled in sports and gaming and is now being filled in the stock market.
Well, that's definitely an interesting take, Michele. So you don't think that there's some mix of professional investors that are leading the way?
Sure I'm sure there's some very clever people, looking at if they can make the market move on this.
Yeah, absolutely crazy. And how do you stomach the volatility as an investor during these times?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, when you look at kind of a chart of where we are in terms of margin debt, levels look very, very high right now. For us, I mean, Clearbanc is the largest e-commerce investor. And so we've invested in more than 3,300 different companies, over $1 billion. And in the last year, we have just seen this segment absolutely explode.
Yeah. So I want to talk about that with you now. We're talking offline, an increase of, is that correct? 13% to over 30% in e-commerce in the US alone?
In the US alone. So that stat is, since COVID, retail sales in America, e-commerce sales were 13% of retail sales that have skyrocketed to over 30% of sales. And now we've basically seen this hold pretty steady since COVID. And so I think this is a big secular change, because what actually happened with consumers is we truly taught the consumers that were late to the e-commerce party how to buy online, right? The folks like my mother who were like, I don't want to buy my groceries online. The blueberries are going to come crushed. Well, she had to buy her groceries online during COVID. The blueberries showed up, they were just fine. And now she's saying to me, why haven't I done this my whole life? And millions of those transactions is what happened. And they happened in actually very big categories. So food, as I mentioned, was a huge one. This isn't just about blueberries. This is about how we all get the food into our homes. That was a big category that exploded in e-commerce. Big items for home. I mean, it was unheard of 2 years ago to be buying $100,000 of furniture online, sight unseen. Now people are remodeling entire homes based on the pictures that they see on the internet. So it's a very big category of spend. And then the last thing is even categories in fashion and beauty, think color cosmetics. I mean, the thought that we would go into a store and use a lipstick tester after COVID is totally bizarre. And so categories like that have also exploded. And so all of that led to more e-commerce penetration. We haven't seen a softening of consumer demand or consumer spending. And so I think it's going to continue to be a very good year in e-commerce across the categories. And people are just going to have to you're seeing all the time people are spending on their phone, whether they're trading and trying to move the market or whether they're just buying. I mean, our screen time has gone up significantly.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating on so many fronts. And I think you alluded to that. I think looking back in like 5, 6 years, we'll look back at the biggest impacts of the
Yeah,
pandemic. And I truly believe that it forcing us to move more into e-commerce is, a lasting
yeah.
impact of the pandemic.
Oh, certainly. I think that these changes are here to stay because we've created the platform and now the e-commerce platforms have made it so easy. They, have your credit card. It's one click to buy. It's as soon as you've produced that and just the time that we save in terms of
Yeah.
finding and looking for hard items. I think the other category that's probably going to see the same level of endured impact is in the telemedicine space. I mean, now that we
Mhm.
understand really what a virus can do, the entire concept of,
Right.
putting all the sick people together so we can make them slightly more sicker with what we all have,
Right.
it's
Right.
totally changed. There was this notion that you had to truly go see a doctor, just like you had to truly show up to the office if you were doing like real work. And I think the pandemic has erased both of those. All of us have realized us and our employees can do real work from our bedrooms if we need to. And that I think will be another big segment that we'll see just a ton of change in.
And I think the blueberry example will resonate with a lot of people. I, for one, was one of those people where I felt like I have to choose
Yeah,
my fruits and veggies. And they're just things that you just learn to let go, just like
exactly.
learning to, I kind of have to trust the system and give my Visa number. And then you
Yeah.
realize, like, yes, it will arrive and no one frauded me or copied, or stole my identity, for example. And of course, these are risks. But day to day, the e-commerce platform definitely works. Now, one trend we have also seen, Michelle, is companies like Victoria's Secret abandoning their brick and mortar stores and going totally e-commerce. Is this, are we going to see more and more companies do this, like leaving their flagship stores here?
It's a really good question. And I know we've backed a bunch of these. Temperley London is a brand worn by Kate Middleton that we backed in the UK, and they used their capital to just build out e-commerce today. So I think everyone, Pier One, Dress Bar, those are where other ones that had huge brick and mortar positions before that have now basically rebuilt entirely as an e-commerce first company. And I think this will happen across the spectrum because what will happen is even simple brick and mortar stores, think about the tiny shoe store in a little town. That shoe store owner has now realized that if they actually had a website, people from their community would buy from them. And so I think we're seeing that shift. I think you're probably right. Our footprint, if you looked at square footage per person in America, was the highest of any country in the world, and it was so saturated. And so I think we are seeing certainly a reckoning. We're not only seeing a reckoning across retail space, but certainly office space as well. And so it's probably going to be a pretty tumultuous couple of years for the real estate market as people feel, how to really occupy these buildings again. But I think you probably will see a lot of businesses like Victoria's Secret that will probably, maybe use a couple of flagship stores, but maybe 80% or more of a reduction
Yeah.
in retail footprint.
Yeah, the other angle just on this before we wrap is that we're seeing countries that were slow to adopt to e-commerce before really, jump into the game here. Countries like
Yeah,
Brazil, Russia,
Mexico.
Mexico, right? What are you seeing or what hearing
We are seeing
outside?
all of that tremendous growth. And what prevented a lot of these companies from growing is traditional kind of smaller local economies. But e-commerce has now been shifted. I mean, one of the big problems in Mexico is that so many of your transactions are cash on delivery, right? It's a very similar market to the Indian e-commerce market, where when you get your package, you pay for it from the delivery driver. But now is so much payments infrastructure being built. There's now a lot of ways to accommodate for that part of the cash economy. And we're seeing those markets absolutely skyrocket. And so I think it is going to be a very good year for the e-commerce companies themselves, e-commerce platforms that are working on these. And effectively, you get to own and talk to your customer in a very different way, right? As a brick and mortar store, you were hoping that customer came back to you. Maybe you could send them an email, but you were really hoping to get that foot traffic back. You can be much more engaged digitally now. And so I just think we're going to see an incredible year for this.
Fascinating indeed, Michelle. Finally, before I let you go, you said invested in over 3,300 companies, $1 billion worth of investments. You're a top 40 under 40. Like I said, the youngest dragon on Canada's Dragon Den. What's next for you?
So for me, it's really about building Clearbanc to I think the size and scale. I mean, last year we announced that we were funding companies in the UK, had before launch had already deployed $30 million or 30 million pounds in that market. And so, there's a lot of new products we're launching this year and a lot of international expansion that I'm very excited about. And then just like everyone else, trying to survive COVID.
Amen to that, Michele. Always happy to speak with you. Come back anytime and tell us about everything you're up to.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
And thank you for watching. We'll have much more for you on Stansberry Research. So be sure to stay tuned and share us where you watch us. Thanks for watching. I'm Daniela Cambone.